There's a Christian right, feminist left alliance
Sure.
against porn right now. There are multiple states passing these ID laws, which is really just embarrass you enough to not jerk off. And I'm gonna say something there where it's like the war on porn to me is kind of misplaced, like you said earlier, because these desires have kind of always been around in human beings. Thus, porn was like born. You know, now do I think that things kind of get extreme and yeah, totally, but those natural desires were there. I remember when there was this big discussion going on about like choking, right? And who was kind of responsible for choking being introduced into the bedroom, and people were saying porn. I think it was you that brought up the fact that when we talk to guys, a good chunk of these dudes will say like it was introduced to them by the girl.
Oh yeah, obviously.
So I don't get this
Yes.
war on porn.
So actually, I wrote down a couple stats here because, like, one of the people I've dated in my life was is someone who researched a lot of actual sexology, and like, there's a whole field of actual sexology. Like Deborah So, another acquaintance to casual friend, is a sexologist. She wrote a great book about sex and gender. So we have the data on actual human sexual fantasies and all this going back to like My Secret Garden by the pseudonymous Nancy Friday in like the 70s. I'm not going to count Kinsey here because that dude's like a weird rapist. But I mean, there's a whole literature on this stuff. So I mean, like, first of all, porn is not some novel phenomenon created by crazy sick men in the past 30 years. I mean, erotica is about 10,000 years old. It's made up a similar proportion of human art the entire time. It's been about equally graphic most of that time. Like the Kama Sutra shows anal sex, light bondage, all the stuff we do now. Romans and most civilized people, like ancient Romans, were a hell of a lot kinkier than we were now. They had
Oh yeah.
slaves, they had orgies, naked gladiators with 10-inch dicks would walk around. I mean, there's like the stereotype of Americans actually is we're actually considered pretty good lovers because we're big and we're tough, but we're not globally, if you party, we're not considered to be sexual libertines. We're considered to be kind of prudes.
Cruise. Yeah.
And I actually think that, and everyone who's been to Europe or Africa knows this to the point where it's kind of a joke. But Jamaicans similarly, like just watch Jamaican daggering at a party. Like nobody is sex is a part of life. Americans are not the most sexual people on the planet. The reason we have this insane reaction to regular, like, happy wife gives blowjob pornography is that is a big part of our culture. That's where the Christian right comes from. And what a lot of feminists won't admit is that that's where a lot of feminism comes from, too.
Mm.
There's a strong, what's called battle axe tradition in feminism. Lips that touch liquor will never touch mine, so on down the line. Comes out of prohibitionism, comes out of women dominated semi church spaces like Unitarianism. So that is the ground level of the anti pornography movement. It's not a backlash in a libertine society to evil. It's a very old prudish tradition that you can respect or disagree with. And I mean, my problem with like the anti-pornography movement is that a lot of the stuff they say is complete bullshit. So like there's a common, but like I'm a stats guy. Like there's a common claim that like 88% of porn includes violence. If you look at that, what's counted as violence is stuff like hair pulling, ass slapping, like light choking. It's just sex. Like slapping your girl on the ass or pulling her hair if she asks you to is not abuse.
Hmm.
Nobody thinks it is. Like some weird preacher wrote that down. If you told your wife this, she would laugh at you. There's a one of those studies includes ingesting semen as like abuse. That's swallowing. That's what most girls do when they give blowjobs. Like, I mean, we're talking about an adult topic here, but like, you
Yeah.
can't just define any sex but the missionary position as violence
Hmm.
and then say that pornography is violence. Like, anal sex is another thing that's regularly counted as violence. This is all just like marriage on the weekends. Like, it's not, these are not serious abusive things. Like, would even question whether consensual BDSM is at all abusive, but that at least that's an argument you can make. But so I mean, when you see this, you're looking at the ass slapping, hair pulling, light slapping, choking, humming on each other, anything like that would be put in that category. And again, it's really worth noting, and any experienced man, probably including both of us, knows this. women tend to be freakier with guys they like than men are. Every man knows this. Men's sexual fantasies are like faces and positions. Like,
Yes.
hey, get on top this time. Can you bring a friend? I mean, like that sort
Yeah.
of stuff.
Threesome.
You know,
Yeah.
like women's fantasies, and I'm making fun of the men a little bit, presenting us as kind of brutes, but like women's fantasies, if you ever read a series of women's romance novels, you'll be genuinely surprised and a bit shocked, boys. Like, I mean, there's an entire series of orc porn that's out right now on Amazon. And every one of these books has sold more than 500,000 copies.
Yep.
And it's literally women being raped by goblins. It's like the idea of being ravished by these powerful beings from another warrior species that don't have to control themselves in a situation where you don't have to feel guilty. That's obviously the framework there. So like when, and by the way, about 60% of women have, I don't know if I would call them rape, but what are called CNC, consensual non-consent fantasies about extremely rough sex.
Hmm.
Guys in general, and this is up to each couple, I don't have a moral judgment here, but often have some issues acting these out along the lines of, I'm not trying to see the police. This
Yep.
is not a thing that I like to do. So this whole thing of like these brutal men are trying to watch these dirty movies and then hold us down and choke us. No, these movies are filmed by female actresses for $10,000 a scene, and 60% of the time, it's you guys initiating rough sex. Like, I'm not trying to make this a male female thing. It's just those are actual facts that are
Hmm.
very often relevant. So, I mean, I'm not actually a huge fan of pornography, but this whole idea of like men are forcing this onto women, women never watch it. 55% of women watch porn, by the way. It's worse than it's ever been. That is just pretty much made up. So you can say as a wife, like, I don't want you watching a large amount of pornography. I want to satisfy you personally. But this is where we're in a married couple. But the sheer dishonesty of a lot of stuff on the hard right and the hard left really irritates me. And this is a good example of some of that dishonest material.